fellow Nigerian countrymen from around the world. My name is Mr. Ekeleme Ukoumunne. I am one of the originators of this wonderful platform, the One Nation, One Voice platform. I have a vision for this wonderful country. Think about it. In every state, we have a plethora of untapped mineral resources. We don't just have oil. We don't need to be dependent on just oil. And on top of that, we have an engine room that most nations, especially Western nations, would be jealous of. We have 200 million people who are ingenuitive, inventive, hardworking, and entrepreneurial. And they are aged between 18 to 35, at least 65 to 70%. I say it again, most nations would be most envious of that fact. And this is the reason why I have such a vision, because I know that even though we are multiple tribes, multiple languages, I know that if we stand together, even with those multiple religions, if we stand together and work together, we can make Nigeria an economic superpower. And I say it again, we can make Nigeria an economic superpower. We have been given everything. All we need now is to come together and work together. And that's the reason why I launched this platform, because I want all of you from around the world to participate with me, to discuss with me, to pose questions, to answer questions. And let's do it as one people, having one vision, one goal. We are not the only country that has done it. And I say has done it because we're going to do it. Switzerland has managed to do it. They've got multiple religions and they have multiple ethnic groups, and they have managed to stand as one and be a prosperous nation. China has managed to do it. They have multiple languages, again, multiple ethnic groups, even though you probably think they're all Chinese, multiple ethnic groups, multiple dialects, 1.2 billion people, and they have managed to do it. India has managed to do it. Multiple religions, multiple ethnic groups, multiple tongues, and there are 1.1 billion people, and they have managed to do it. It's time for us as Nigerians to rise. Hence the reason for this platform. Let's join together, let's work together, and let us make Nigeria great. And also good evening to Nigerians in Nigeria and Nigerians in the rest of the world. I presume it will be evening there for you. This is trying times. What can I say? This is your host, Ekeleme Ukoumunne, and we are introducing to you the One Nation, One Voice platform. The subject, the topic for today is COVID-19. But before we go into a brief of that, let's introduce our panelists. First of all, we have an anointed man of God, Reverend Albert Oduwole.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and it's exciting to be a Nigerian this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for honoring us, gracing with your presence. Yeah. And we have our other panelist here, Mr. Ebun David, who is an investment consultant in Canada.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here, and hopefully we can come to some good conclusions and a solution as well.
Superb. And joining us later, we will have our national cruiserweight boxing champion of Muay Thai, Mr. Hassan Hosseini. But for the moment, let's talk about COVID-19, because that is on everybody's minds right now in Nigeria and around the world. The world is practically on lockdown. There are some areas where it's been easing on restrictions, but we find ourselves in a situation in an area that we really can't talk about too much, but based on Bill Gates, the World Health Organization, WHO, and the CDC, the Center for Control of Disease and Prevention, basing it on their guesswork models, and you know what I think about guesswork models. Nevertheless, they were theorizing that millions would die in Africa. We have seen that that's not happened thus far. And in the US, they also theorized the same thing, not basing it on real data from viruses. Again, like I said, we won't go too deep into this particular subject right now. We want to talk about COVID-19, how it's affecting the normal populace. What I can tell you is, based on history and decades of governance in Nigeria, they have been spending approximately 5% of their budget on healthcare. So we find ourselves in a situation in Nigeria right now where we were ill-prepared for this pandemic. Yes, are we covered by God? Are we covered? Definitely. Have we got through Ebola and sailed through before? Yes. But it's not good what's happened to the health sector. And that's why we find now that 0.5% of beds we have per 1,000 population, and we've got 200 million people. It's not acceptable. But I'm not going to spend too much time. I really want to hear what the panelists have to say about COVID-19. So let's start off, panel. We'll start off with the Reverend.
Yeah.
My question to the panel at this point in time is: do you feel? First of all, let me ask the question because I actually said it in the video. First thing I'd like to ask is COVID-19 in Nigeria? Because there are different rumors. People are saying, based on stats and tests, it shows that there is. From people that came in. However, there are different rumors and theories out there on the social media. I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure your panelists have all seen them, which say that it's not in Nigeria. So let's first of all start with, is COVID-19 in Nigeria?
All right. I'm going to approach it from three different spectrum. Number one, because Nigeria, people don't trust the leadership. Unfortunately for us as a nation, the worst of us happen to be leading the best of us. And when you don't trust your leader, whatever they say, you doubt. And especially because with COVID-19, there are quite some money that is coming in, which means per state, the more you have, the more resources you're going to get. So there is a likelihood for people to say there is when there is none. That's number one. Number two, I'll definitely want to say there is. Why? Because Nigerians are probably one of the most traveling people anywhere in the world. The highest revenue of British Airways and Virgin Atlantic is from Nigeria. They make a lot of money because British Airways and Virgin Atlantic sometimes travels out of Nigeria twice in a day, every day of the week.
That's true.
So that makes you realize how much mobile Nigerians are. You hardly get to the airport and you see few people. So with that kind of migration in and out, it's difficult if there is really COVID-19 for there not to be in Nigeria. Number three thing I'm going to say, what people are saying is that, well, if it's COVID, it's not killed as many people. But a few things they need to realize. Number one, either you like it or not, prayer is working in Nigeria. There is no way we can explain Ebola. There is no way we can explain every other thing. It's just got to be praised. Number two, if it is true that chloroquine has an effect on COVID, we are a country that is built on malaria medicine. So maybe we've taken more than enough of our share of that, but that's just my thoughts anyway.
Thank you, Reverend. And for yourself, Ebun?
Yeah, great points. I think I agree with everything you said in 100%. The only thing I'll add is another aspect that Nigeria has that a lot of other countries don't have, especially in the Western nations, is we have an exceedingly young population, very healthy young population. And I was speaking with Eke as well today. Even our older population is very, very healthy. My grandmother, last time I met her, or last time I saw her, I should say, she was 84 years old.
Can you imagine?
And I mean, she's walking around, she's moving around freely. And this is both of my grandmothers, both almost 90. They walk around freely, they talk around, they're healthy, they still work. You understand? I mean, she remembers phone numbers off the top of her head.
Wow.
Phone numbers. So we do have that going for us, which is a bit of a natural health. Our own natural healthcare system, so which I really thank God for that. That's amazing. So yes, there's a high likelihood that Nigeria does have cases. However, I don't think we'll see the same impact because we have that covering, as you mentioned, Doctor, and also just the makeup of Nigeria as well.
So basing on those prerequisites, let's look at it from this perspective. I always say that in Nigeria, we generally eat better. We eat natural foods. And in the Western world, they generally eat what we would call GM source foods. So that's one of the things that helps our immune system. And as you said, generally the people are stronger, hardworking, probably do labor from a young age. Yeah. Okay. So if we look at some of those prerequisites, do you think then Do you think? And also, I have to say, just for the camera and for those that are at home or wherever they're watching, it's been shown by various studies that coronavirus doesn't do well in heat.
Yeah.
Apparently it does not multiply. From what I've seen on videos and what some experts are saying, it does not multiply at the speed it does in colder countries.
Yeah.
So there could be various reasons, and obviously we've spoken about prayer, which is working in Nigeria. I don't want to say it right now, but you should be praying about the government, and we'll be sending out prayer points at some point in time. The question is, Reverend, can it take its root then? Can coronavirus, could we be looking at a possible Italy scenario? You see, when I ask that question, I know we've said all these prerequisites, but what we also have is an extremely underfunded healthcare system.
Yeah.
And actually, in some senses, it may have turned out to be a slight blessing. Right, in regards to coronavirus and the lockdowns, because now the so-called elite or cabal that would probably travel to other parts of the world and go and use their hospitals and their state-of-the-art hospitals, but have not decided to invest in their own people in Nigeria, are now faced with a situation. Now they have to use the local hospitals and build temporary isolation centers in the stadium. So my question is, do you believe that COVID-19 could take root?
Okay.
Let
Let me start from the perspective of WHO and Bill and Melinda Gates. Their thinking is, number one, like you said, the health care system is almost zero.
Yeah.
So if there is a pandemic, we don't have if New York system is weary, if London system is overwhelmed, we don't even have a system at all. That's number one. Number two, a major chunk of Nigeria, social distancing can't even be practiced. When you have a family, a man married 3 wives, they have 20 children, living door to door with another neighbor that's got the same thing, with another neighbor that's got the same thing. When a lot of people's mode of transportation is public bus that carries a lot of people. So when WHO and Melinda and Bill looks at all that, they came to a conclusion: we are in trouble. But like I said, they didn't factor in the prayers, they didn't factor in the immunity from chloroquine, they didn't factor in a few things. But another thing they didn't factor in is our immunity. Like he said, Ebun said, and very precise, Nigerian immunity is naturally strong.
True.
You see,
True.
God is a very great God. The things that gives you immunity are not expensive. I tell them in Nigeria, you need to have some money to eat wrong. In Nigeria, you need to have some money. It's when you have money, you start to eat pizza. You have to. When you have money, you eat the beans, you eat the vegetables, you take the fruits.
Yep.
And most of the fruits are so cheap, it's amazing. And the vegetables can be cultivated at your backyard. So not just like you have a lot of flowers here, some of those people have vegetable garden just at the back of the house. And they pick it from there naturally and cook it. So our weather is very wonderful because, like I tell my Caucasian friends, and they find it difficult to believe, it's all year summer in Nigeria. So when I listen to doctors here in North America say, well, hopefully by summer it gets better, I'm like, well, we are in summer. We're already in summer, you know. So the weather and the fact that we do. Now, the way Nigeria is already structured by God, this is a God dimension of it. The fruit of the season takes care of the plague of the season in Nigeria. For example, when it's cold and you want to have the cold flu, the oranges will just start coming out and takes care of that. You know, so when you need something, there is a fruit in season that has the vitamin inbuilt in it to help you overcome the plague of the season. So if people just naturally take those things, their immunity is well built.
That's excellent. I'm not even really sure I can even add to that. But but I think that's dead on accurate.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough conversation being had about developing immunity over long term. You know, in Western nations, that's something that when people talk about, you know, they'll still resort to a lot of processed things. But in terms of, you know, what the doctor said is the more natural ways of doing things, which I believe is the way God intended, anyways.
Yeah.
So, you know, can COVID-19 take a deep root in Nigeria and yield the results that we saw, or that we're seeing in the U.S. and in Italy? Well, first of all, to that I say God forbid. But second to that, what I'll say is I think that's highly unlikely. Even with the weak system, or the inexistent system, we should say, and you know, the inability to actually create social distancing. The factors that do help us are much stronger. So my take on that will be, I think it's unlikely.
Well, thank you for that, gentlemen. And you know, based on what we're saying, I'm happy because, Reverend, you spend some time in Nigeria. You spend a lot of time in Nigeria, and I don't want the audience that are in Nigeria to think that we take it lightly what is going on in Nigeria, because in the Western world, many countries in the Western world have done. I may not necessarily agree with their strategy, and that's where you can find it on the post in terms of what I believe is the solution. Maybe we'll touch on that later, but they have brought in stimulus plans to help businesses. They have a welfare system in many countries. When we look at the US, maybe the welfare system doesn't work quite as well, but it still works better than in Nigeria. But in many Western nations, I don't want anyone to feel sick to their stomach, but you know, people are receiving sometimes, you know, up to, you know, £1,000 or more than £1,000 per month, or $2,000 or whatever it may be. But in Nigeria, our people are suffering. If you're in that top 10%, maybe 10%, 5%, or even possibly 15%, you might not be feeling it as much. So it's easy for the government to create certain policies and say lockdown for 2 weeks, lockdown for 4 weeks. But for the average person in many of these cities, or even in these towns, or even in these villages, where they're earning, you know, the masses are earning $2 a day, $2 a day, locking down where their source is maybe that the hawking on the street or in the market trading, and they can't do that. Then they have no welfare system. I want us to just, I want to say personally that even though I can't, you know, empathize. I'm not in your situation. I can say I've been in situations. They are difficult. We are concerned about that. Yeah. So my question for you, and we're going to show a couple of videos in a few minutes, but my question for you is, okay, so now we have the lockdown.
Yeah.
What about the average Nigerian?
My thinking, because fortunately I have a leg in Nigeria as my base, and I travel the world. Maybe Canada is becoming my second home. I know the system. When people criticize the church in Nigeria, I feel it, because the church in Nigeria is the social system of Nigeria. Here, when you lack, you talk to government. In Nigeria, when you lack, you talk to a pastor. Need not even be your pastor. When people are hungry, they ask anybody they see, is there a church in this area? Is there a pastor in this area? Then they go there to go talk. So we know that people, I mean, some people are saying, look, we might have COVID-19, so it might kill us. But if we stay home, hunger will definitely kill us. So it's better for us to face what might rather than stay with what will. So it's a battle between COVID-19 and hunger. Hunger will kill, COVID-19 might kill. So they're like, look, don't lock us down, let's move. And I feel their empathy. As of last week now, some of these armed robbers now are going from house to house, taking food, taking money, taking phones. And so a lot of areas in Nigeria, the people are no longer sleeping. They form themselves into the vigilante group because even the security system is not there. Unfortunately, on my way here, I was listening to BBC, and BBC from UK said that there had been more deaths now from the security force than COVID-19. COVID had killed about 12 people so far, and the security had killed 18.
Yeah.
They are just excessive force over lockdown. So all that together, it's a complex situation. When people ask me, what do I think we need to do? I don't know. Because for a government that says they've distributed 5 billion naira in 2 days, and I have roots in the north, the west, the south, and the east of Nigeria, and nobody had told me they got a penny. How do you explain that? And then they give just a cup of rice to a house. And then the Minister of Information said, nobody can say it's hungry in Nigeria because we've taken care of them. What? Wow. And to distribute money is not difficult. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. Anybody, just talk to all the banks. Give us a list of people that have less than 10,000 in their account. Almost every Nigerian has an account now with a BVN. So send them the money. But they put the money on the table. Oh my. So some the rich have gotten richer. So for me, that's the problem. So for me, I'll say the lockdown, it will be difficult for it to really work in Nigeria.
Yeah.
For example now, some farmers are saying it just started raining. This is the time for us to go and plant. If you stop us from planting now, the whole nation will go hungry later. Not only us. Because we are not only producing for ourselves, we are producing for the nation. So once you stop us from planting now, get ready for farming in the future. So it's a very dicey situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to sound like a broken clock here, but I once again completely agree. From my experience, so I've had the opportunity, privilege to live under both. Yeah. So I was born in Nigeria, grew up in Nigeria for about half of my life, and so I know when we're there, God helped us and God provided for us. But I understand that side of things, and now also living here in a Western nation, so I've had the opportunity to see both, and I think that when you look at the difference between a country like Nigeria and some of the Western nations, the difference in the perception of prosperity is really actually rooted in the social activities of government, and that's the main difference. I don't want to get into politics, but I've as an investment consultant, I have a lot of friends who are capitalist minded, and and they tell me capitalism is the way to do things. If you want a country to prosper, the country needs to we have this political talk, and I don't really care for all that. But what I simply said to him, I said, if you want a full capitalist country, look at Nigeria. Would you like your country to be like that? Yeah. And now he stepped back for a second and said, okay, well, no. You need a little bit of some government help. Why? That's exactly what it is. So a government that doesn't think to take care of its people, and is more concerned about posturing, saying, I mean, that's an absolutely despicable statement to make, right? And we'll see some videos later that show how much of a lie that is. So that needs to be challenged. People need to rise up and challenge that, and and rise up with a voice and say, no, don't lie to us. Right, because my stomach didn't feel your lie there, but we hope that we can spark some kind of action on their part. Right?
Absolutely, I think in Nigeria, as Nigerians, wherever we are based, we know that in Nigeria there's a lot of there's some information. And there's a lot of misinformation. Sometimes it's difficult to find out exactly what's going on, but I will only say that there are different things going around. I want to dispel certain things. For instance, that 700 billion naira went up in the treasury. That's not accurate. They run their systems digitally, and they have a backup in Abuja. So we know 700 billion didn't likely
just go up in smoke. However, we find ourselves in a situation where, and I'm not supporting, I'm being honest here, I'm not here to slate Buhari's government. There are some things that they don't do well, and I believe that, you look at governments around the world, that's probably the situation for many. However, let's not make it about Buhari's government right now. I would say successive governments have not made use, have not tapped into the abundant mineral resources and the plethora of mineral resources.
Let me come in here and say a few things.
Sorry, Reverend. Yes, and the plethora of mineral resources that we have in every state. And then, like you've seen in the video, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the truth of the matter is, that is the country that we have. Now, when you have a head of state, doesn't matter what that person's name is or that government, and you know that they are standing on abundant resources, going around the world, begging for money with a begging bowl. It makes me wonder: do you know that you have those resources? We shouldn't find ourselves in that situation at all, Reverend. So you're about to say.
To start with, when I saw the way they distributed the money, like you said, things are digitalized. You don't bring cash to give people any longer. There's hardly a Nigerian now without a bank account. Hardly. Because almost everybody in the deepest part of the village has somebody in town that they can depend on to send them money. So they shouldn't have even done cash at all. They could have credited people's accounts directly.
Exactly.
Number two thing is that, like you said, we have too much mineral resources. It's extreme. It's like God was partial to us. Not only do we have natural resources, what of human resources? As I travel the world, I see what Nigerians have done. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
In America, of all the immigrants, we are the leading one academically in a lot of spheres.
Very true.
So I believe very strongly that for us to be begging is terrible. We're begging for ventilators. If not, the Nigerians started screaming, then the minister said, okay, they apologize for doing that. But after apologizing, do you still... So this is, in a nutshell, this is what I told somebody. I said, it's very simple. Now you see the difference between nations that save and nations that don't. And we individuals should learn from that. So America can bring out $3 trillion out of savings. Nigeria can't. And in as much as I agree with you, we are not trying to speak against government, but the reserve that we had, that Obasanjo built, Buhari government had finished it and is trying now to borrow in millions of dollars. If you have not used well, and meanwhile, in the midst of that, no other country, no other government had received back what had been stolen like your government. The money you want to borrow is not equal to the money you said you have gotten back. And if you can't account for that one, any nation that borrow you money does not even like our country. So that is where I have a problem.
Thank you for that, Reverend.
Yeah. This is a conversation that we've had a few times. When we talk about natural resources in abundance, right? You probably couldn't even put a dollar figure to the worth of that, right?
If you mistakenly throw seeds outside, it grows.
It grows.
No manure.
Right? The agriculture, everything, right? But one thing that you said, which is for me, I think is still Nigeria's biggest resource, is the human resource.
Yes.
The human capital.
Absolutely.
Which we have in abundance like no other country.
Yeah.
I think the statistic is somewhere around 65% of Nigerians are between the ages of 15 and
in fact, 50% now
of
of between 20 and above. We have 50% now. No other nation in the world.
That's crazy, right? For example, Canada, one of the biggest problems that Canada's facing in terms of macroeconomics is an aging population, right? Everywhere you look, everyone's older. People are retiring in mass. There's a labor shortage. In a country like Nigeria, that's not even a problem. So instantly,
Yeah.
you can begin manufacturing. You can start industry. You can begin changing the whole landscape of the whole country instantly, and you have people right away. And not to even talk about education. So all the resources are there.
Yeah.
We just need somebody that has the will, the vision, the drive, was sent by God to actually say, you know what, this is what Nigeria is meant to be, and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's so true what you said, and we'll go shortly into those two videos, but and see what the pandemonium that's actually going on in Nigeria. But it's just like what you just said, that human resource. You're absolutely right. 65% between the age of 18 to 35. Western Europe and the Western nations, to them, we're like the envy of the world, because that's an engine room, as you said. With that sort of populace, you could turn around Nigeria if you have, again, the right vision, the will, the strength, the boldness,
Exactly.
you know, and the wisdom. You could turn around Nigeria, as you said. God said, man, you could turn around Nigeria probably in about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
You have to remember, we still have, and again, because we're going to face these in other topics, I don't want to bog down here so much. But just remember, I'm probably going to pronounce it badly here. Sorry to anyone who's Yoruba back home. But in Abeokuta, you have a steel industry there, which is ready to go. Ready to go. It's been ready to go since 1979. It's just waiting for someone to switch it on. And, you know, that would supply 80,000 jobs. So, you know, again, like I said, we won't talk too much about it now. Let's have a look at a couple of videos. We'll look at first of all, this is our people suffering and begging for agege bread, which is just so pitiful.
Peaceful.
Terrible. Hello, my fellow Nigerian countrymen from... You just have to look at certain nations like Brunei and see what a leader can do in a country. Again, let's just look at successive governments and say what a government can do. And you can see that the average person in Brunei has, I think, 2 houses and 2 cars. The same could be in Nigeria. We don't find ourselves in that situation. The masses are pushing themselves to get a loaf of agege bread. I'm going to be honest. When I saw that video, I wouldn't say it broke my heart, but the first thing I had to do was pray. I was just like, this just cannot happen. It cannot continue. You know, our people can't be left in that situation. You know, so it is a time for all Nigerians to we say in the Western Europe, wake up and smell the coffee. Next time it comes to your elections, don't just take a bag of rice or a bag of gari and think that's going to last you for the next 4 years of voting this individual who has no particular manifesto, no real policies, doesn't know it's going to implement them. It's just giving you a bag of rice. It's not good enough. But that brings me to another question before we even look at our final video, and that is, so we said what the Nigerian government didn't do properly. I was actually surprised that they even brought in isolation centres. I've got to be honest, and that's quite sad, because it means that the benchmark that I set for them is quite low, and that's more a shame for the government than it is for me, right? But what do you think, Reverend? I know you say you don't really have an ideal plan. Different nations are doing different things. Sweden has lighter restrictions. People can go to bars, they can go to restaurants. In Canada, we don't.
Yeah.
You can't go to bars, you can't go to restaurants. But based on what you've just said about the situation we find ourselves, what do you think could have been a more plausible plan? Let's put it that way.
Beautiful. Let me start by saying that an average uneducated Nigeria, that's already a high population of people, don't even understand what you're saying. And I'm not trying to be funny, but we've seen even our president, mask on his face, bare handshaking. That already nullify what you're saying. So, number one thing they could even have done, first of all, is letting people know what they're talking about.
Very true.
You don't wake up. I've had some people call it coronavirus, some call it coronavirus. They don't even know what it is. Even our president initially called it COVID-1 and 19. They don't know. So I believe that's where they should have started from.
Information.
Number two, I believe very strongly if they've done their information well, it will help a great deal. Number two, they should make it a partial lockdown. Partial, once people are well educated, wash your hand constantly. So you can close schools, turn the schools to markets for one reason only, because there are gates. And markets are open, people coming from everywhere. But once there are gates, people can wash their hands on the way in. You can spray them, they go in to do what they've got to do, they come out, that will work. You can say to cab drivers, you can't take more than 3 people, so there will be some distance in the car. That will have worked. But when you say everything locked down, I don't think that's a good way to do it. So now people are afraid of armed robbers, so they're doing vigilante, which means they're hanging out in the middle of the night. It's not made much of a difference. But also, for me, this is where I also think when we talk to the government, we now need to talk to the people. You see, one of the greatest advantage or problem is that problem provides leadership. There are several people that could rise as a leader right now that are doing nothing. This is a time, if you have some money and you have a political ambition, to show compassion. Get food on the road. Get on the road and you educate the people. Don't wait for government. As a church, immediately this was happening, I call my organization. Everybody get money ready, get food ready. You know where the people are going to knock our doors. Every day I get messages online. A lady sent me a message on Facebook. I have 2 children, I have nothing to feed them with. This is my picture, this is my details. This is time to do that. The funniest part of it for me was I got a call from my wife. We have a lot of guests all the year round, so we have a lot of hotels we use. One of the hotels brought cartons and cartons of Indomie and came to drop it in our church, saying, if I don't know any church, I know you can distribute this well. I was excited. Then I told my wife, I said, that guy, not only has he done well, he's won me forever. So now his hotel is #1 in my books. Those are what organizations should be doing now in Nigeria. Not how to make the people, but how to extend a hand of charity right now that people will not easily forget. One of my young mentees in a place called Oduwole in Lagos, in Oduwole, Nigeria, has a charity organization. So he sent a WhatsApp message to a few of us. I discovered that here in this place, the people are suffering and I want to distribute stuff. How can you help? So one of our guys in US already sent him 150,000 naira, and that is how it's building up. This is a time for people to do that. Okay, let's support you. When you give money to government, you just wasted it. Give it to organizations that are credible, or people that you know are credible, that can do something with it. So I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I like a point you said about Nigeria, where the church is the social,
Yeah.
the social corner. So which is good, and that's something that we should absolutely anchor on.
Yeah.
And build that up, because this is our time to shine. It's our time, for glory, to bring that foot forward. I'm quite surprised that there isn't. Let me correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm quite surprised that there isn't even any mass distribution of masks and gloves. Is that happening?
No.
So it's fairly illogical to ask people to do something but not provide the tools to do it. Right? Be safe.
Yeah.
How will I be safe?
Yeah.
Don't spread it.
Yeah. But
What about the education? Okay,
Yeah.
we don't have. Okay, there's a worldwide shortage of gloves and so on. So fine. What about the education and using, the cloths to? That's not happening, right? Let's even forget what they should have done,
yeah.
right? Which is at the start of this, ensure at the borders that you don't let this come in. Another thing that I'm quite surprised that Nigeria, but also even Western nations, are not implementing is focusing like I said, partial lockdown, right? But now focusing your resources, the limited health resources, on the at-risk population, right? Locking down 295 million people is going to cause some problems down the road that will compound, right? Now, if you can isolate those, these are the people that we actually need to protect, right? These are the people that need the most of our covering, and focus on that. Everyone else is fairly fine. Then they can focus on the secondary things, because, like you said, what they're currently doing right now is actually ineffective. It's not helping in any way.
Yeah.
And you can't police 300 million people or 200 million people. You can't police 200 million people, right? Okay. So knowing that you cannot police 200 million people, then you have to think wisely and say, okay, what can we do? These are people who are at risk. Primary, the lockdown is not helping. We're having a lockdown right now in Canada. The numbers are still going up. They told us that after 2 weeks we'll see the effect of the lockdown. It's still going up because there's some things you can't do. So and in Nigeria that's compounded because Nigeria, Nigeria is a landmass of Ontario. Ontario has 12 million people or something like that.
That's right.
Nigeria has, so you can't enforce that. It's not going to work, right? So I think a lot of times people are just doing these things, putting these laws in place just to say they're doing something, because you can't not do anything. Right? Well, how about think about it and do something that actually might work? It's radical. You're going to do it. People are going to say this is crazy, but it's actually going to work because you take the people who are actually at risk and you say, okay, all right, we're going to isolate you. I'm going to make sure you're covered. You're going to get primary covering and primary resources. All right. And now the secondary instruction will be to everybody else: wash your hands, wear masks, and do that. Very few will get it. And even those who get it will probably just withstand and they'll be fine. Right. But
and you actually bring it. I wasn't even going to mention the solution that I posted on the One Nation, One Voice Facebook page, but since you have touched on it, let's touch on it. It's what we have heard the Israeli defense minister. If you have the opportunity to go to YouTube, go and have a look what he was saying as well. I didn't necessarily get it from him, but one thing that he was saying is that the vulnerable, now who are the vulnerable? The elderly, those over 60, 65 years of age, and those who have pre-existing illnesses such as hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes and the like. Those individuals, and even if you have a slight doubt that you might be in that area, you should be the one staying at home. You should be in self-isolation. However, and that's self-isolation knowing that you have been tested, you are healthy, and because there's no point like one of the men of God that I know, anointed men of God, also said, you don't heap in the sick with the healthy, and that's a clear point, and the point that I've made on the page as well is that if you are unhealthy, you shouldn't be in the same house as healthy people. But then again, if you find yourself unhealthy, then the healthy people also need to be tested. So what we have is now isolation centers in Nigeria could be put to good use. And first of all, don't get me wrong, this is not a replacement for information.
Yeah.
For sure.
Information starts on the top, and it's true. You know, one thing I found, and I want to keep this brief, is that when I actually posted the solution and posted the information, so many people got back and said, thank you so much for the information,
Yeah.
which makes me realise that in all parts of the country, they've not even received information about, okay, coronavirus, maybe in Nigeria, how do I tackle it? On an individual level, how do I wash my hands? How do I sanitize? What do I need to do? What do I need to do if I get it? You know, apart from giving the call for the NCDC, that's not enough.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The first thing would have been information, but now we find ourselves in a situation. So that's okay. So how do we move forward? If we move forward in a similar way that your plan, my plan, the Israeli plan was, then in about 3 to 4 weeks, right, we could probably have 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. You'd have all the populace back. Because the truth of the matter is that most able-bodied people that don't have pre-existing, it's easy to put, like they said in the Western world and other parts of the world, it's easy to put an age and presume that young people are getting it. I'm not saying young people are not getting it, but they might have pre-existing illnesses. The average able-bodied person will pass this through their system. Some will not even have symptoms. That's where the danger is, and that's where the testing needs to be. But when you've received 20,000 testing kits from China, from John Marr Foundation, 20,000 testing kits.
And some
all the
nations that
protective
got
gear.
the same thing said half of it is not working.
Yep.
So don't let us say 20,000, maybe 10,000
Yep.
in a 200 million country.
True.
My fear is COVID-19 on one hand, the after effect of COVID-19 on the other hand. You see, some people say that the earthquake is terrible, but the aftershock is worse. The aftershock of this in Nigeria is also an issue. I would have thought that in a country like Nigeria, once they're going to lock down, they should have made condoms available. Because you see a man and his wife, they already have 5 children that they are struggling to take care of. You lock them in, so they're not going to work, they're not doing anything. So sex becomes their recreation. Then they get pregnant now. Then you compound their problem. But you see, unfortunately, the government is not even thinking post the pandemic. Students are in school. You lock down. You didn't tell the school how to even reach their students to give them some brush up. By the time they come back, do they even know where to start from? So there are so many complexities post-pandemic that they are not even thinking about.
That is true. That is true. You know, I would like to believe, not even I would like to believe, I do believe that we're not going to have a pandemic. That's the first point. The second thing, because we're covered, the second thing is I would like to believe that the one thing that will come out of this situation is that the people will be stirred to start to unite. And obviously you need a movement to be able to do that, and you need people to go forth. And you know, one nation, one voice, you know, we are looking for that to, if you want to call it, emancipate people, you know, and motivate them towards the right angle, the right move. But that would be what I would say. Out of this situation, I feel that the people come next election won't make the same mistake. That's what I'd like to believe. But can we watch? Let's watch the second video. And this is a group of people begging outside of someone's house. Juju, I believe it is.
I'm outside my gate. Like they're outside the gate. I went out. I just drove off to go get something from the supermarket, and then I came outside the gate. Look at what I saw. Like they say they are hungry, that they need food, they need help. Just look at everybody here. They say they are hungry, that they need food. Outside my gate, in my estate. There are so many people outside here. Oh my God. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be tough this time around. Believe me, it's going to be very, very, very tough. Just look at the other people. Look at them. Look at what.
So you've seen the video again. To be honest with you, all these videos and all the things that we're seeing in Nigeria is for any patriotic Nigerian. It's sometimes distressing, but we still stand on that hope that all the things that have been said about Nigeria, we believe will come to pass. What I want to speak about the ways in which Nigeria could turn this around for their benefit at this point in time in this situation, because we hear about the Chinese. They are, if you want to call it, exporting their medical health workers around the world, helping other countries. We have approximately 75,000 doctors, 185,000 nurses in Nigeria, but we have thousands of health professionals and specialists also outside of Nigeria, you know, diaspora in the rest of the world. So my question is, how do you feel that Nigeria at this point in time, with the minimal deaths, the minimal cases, we're talking about 407 cases, which has only grown by, I'm not saying it's good that we have these cases, I'm saying it's grown by 9 since Friday. That's not near the numbers of any other country, and especially not in the Western world. I think Italy would have been like, if we could have that, that would be quite good, you know. And then you're looking at 12 deaths in total out of 200 million people. Is this a time where Nigeria could turn it for their benefit and start exporting the health workers, or is there any other ways that Nigeria could turn it for their benefit?
Yeah, I won't say exporting water guys because we don't have enough. You export what you have more of. Already, we have exported enough. It's called brain drain. We have so many people, and unfortunately, the health minister said last year that we have enough, and I can't imagine a health worker be able to say that. But having said that, there are so many ways we could benefit from this. Number one, the hand sanitizer itself. All the products to make it is easily available in natural resources in Nigeria. So we can make enough of hand sanitizer to go around the world. Number two, my wife showed me today her WhatsApp, what somebody sent to her. Sent her about 40 pieces of Ankara-made masks, face mask. Well done, protected with the sieve, beautiful. One university student did bead one. Those are things we can export now without even waiting for the government. Get on eBay, get on Amazon, advertise your thing. Do it even on Instagram, do it on Facebook. You can make your money right where you are right now without waiting for the government. Number two, like I said, if you're a politician, this is the time to make your impact felt. Let your people know you care. Go directly to the road, take care of them. You see, Nigeria is the kind of country in which you can't say, I will have done something, but there is nobody to do. No, we have more than enough people that want to die. Number two, as family, this is the time to bond.
Absolutely.
Husband, wife, children, teach your kids to cook, spend time with your wife, with your husband, build relationship that you've been busy to build. This is also time for you to restore your own personal health. So the Bible says, bless the Lord, O my soul, bless the Lord, and forget not his benefit. Many a times, Nigerians are too focused on the lockdown and forget the benefits of the lockdown. So it's time to write that book you've always said you will write, but you don't have time. Because after now, I was telling my people, after now, if you tell me, you know that book, I don't have time, I'll tell you, you're lying. It's motivation you lack. Because you've gotten time now. The world, as we know it, has been divided into two, BC and AC. Before Corona, after Corona. And the good thing between BC and AC is that we now have time to prepare for the transition. I just did a recording for my message on Sunday, and that one I was talking about how to prosper after the pandemic, and the kind of things you need to do and focus on now to prosper after the pandemic. So there are so many things as individuals, as a nation. I'm not looking at the government, because like you said, there's no will So once they can, what they are thinking about is how do we get funds and pocket. But individuals can rise from where they are, write a book, do a thing. It's time for you to rehearse those drama and write it and produce it and send it around the world. Part of these, I know Nigerians are very hardworking people.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure out of this they're going to get a lot out of it.
Absolutely. Ebun?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that. I like that you focused on. At this point in time, just skip the government. Forget it. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for them to do something.
Yeah.
You know, I believe God will handle that in time. But I like that you focused on individuals. Right? What can you do? I would love to see an explosion and an investment in natural in farming and agriculture. Personally, and it seems weird. And I suppose that's not the biggest money maker in the world, right? You know, farming and whatnot. Number one reason, looking at the potential need. I mean, even BC before Quran, there was always, you know, that farming. There's a need food, right? But you know, post pandemic or post issue, this is a time where we can actually begin to focus on what we're good at, which is natural food, healthy food, and make sure that this is something that is spread out, you know, locationally across the country. So even if you're a big corporation that has funds, right? You can begin to invest in different locations that don't have natural farmland around them, and begin to invest in that. And you can actually begin to feed. You know, not that we should begin to transform into this Western culture where food gets transported across the country, so it needs preservatives and all those chemicals. But if you could actually invest in different lots where you can spread locally, so at least for the essentials, you know.
And that is possible in Africa, because Africa has 60% of agricultural land in the world right now.
Absolutely.
Out of all the countries, 60%. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Absolutely. We, you know, in Canada, I mean, you know, we can't really do that. You have to rely on distance, right? So you have to use all those preservatives, right? But in Nigeria, this is an opportunity to invest in farming and agriculture, and you have the workers to do it. You know, and even today, I think that will actually change things. You know what? In 10 years, you know, maybe in the Western world, they'll say this was grown in Nigeria. We'll say, oh, it must be healthy.
It must be healthy.
Right? So I hope to see that.
I want to touch on one last question before we begin to round up, because we've been enjoying ourselves, and I'm sure that everybody at home and everybody who's been watching has been enjoying themselves. But we do have a schedule as well. So one question I want to ask is this: as I started off the show by saying, Bill Gates, World Health Organization. And Bill Gates, I don't want to get into even the facts about him or the rumors about him, but Bill Gates, the World Health Organization, again, can't get into the rumors about that, can't even get into the facts, and the CDC, right, the Centers of Control of Disease and Prevention, have been working on a contagion prevention model, right? And that model is based on purely guesswork, of individuals, of human beings, not on virus data, not on facts. And that is what has been spread to many governments around the world, and there's been that general fear. Now, yes, there have been those few governments that said, no, we're not going to stick to that, we're going to go along our own model. There's probably about 2 of them in the world, and now America has said, Trump has said, cancelling funding to WHO, doesn't like the way that they handled the China crisis, and there's different things coming out from there as to whether the WHO acted appropriately. Now, we know that they fed that same information to Africa, and that's what the African governments, the different governments in Africa have been operating on. My question to you, and a final question, is this: should Nigeria the Nigerian government throw away that guesswork and stick to real data that is coming from the viruses around the world, or should they stick to what the WHO is saying?
Thank you. 2 things. Number one, Nigerian government should know that they have a problem outside COVID-19. The price of oil had plunged to its lowest in several years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they had no option. The budget is built on oil. So, before COVID, there's already a problem on ground that they should put their resources into. Number two, the model, you can't blame Bill Gates and co. There is no facts on ground. But it's for you to receive it or reject it. Donald Trump is even acting against it right now, and I think Nigeria should. Nigeria, we should educate our people. We should use this opportunity to build better hospital facilities. I must tell you sincerely, this won't be the last of the virus. There'll be another one that will still come.
Yeah.
Now that they've discovered that I can't always get a ticket and flee,
Very true.
okay? I've always said the solution to all Nigerian problems is very simple. And I need you to hear it because you are quite into that. Once you become an elected officer in Nigeria, your kids can only go to the local schools around them, and you and your family can only go to the local hospitals. Once we pass that as law, Nigeria will be better in 1 year.
Very true. Very true.
That's excellent. I would love to see that.
Yeah,
I would love to see that.
I love to see that.
Yeah, that's excellent. In terms of should they, I think regardless of what you hear people say, you can't throw out your common sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the Nigerian officials have a responsibility. We have to look at it and see what's in it, and understand that a lot of times when and this is historical, right? Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes not. When world organizations make rules and make recommendations and things like that, they look at it from their perspective. So, for example, the lockdown, right? In a place like Canada, that could work for sure, right? They didn't consider that this is literally impossible in a place in Nigeria. So a lot of times, I would assume, I haven't actually seen in detail what the recommendation is, but I can almost guarantee that it's based on the perspective of a Western nation. They may not have even considered how would this even be, possible to implement in a place like Nigeria. So it's up to us who actually know the country, understand the country, and I know what the country needs and decide, what we're gonna do. We have the wisdom of God working with us. We have one of the greatest resources in the world, which is a wealth of godly people, Christians, big men, men and women of God who are people of wisdom, right? If you're wise, you'll hear what God says, and you will prosper by the sayings of the prophets, right? Yeah. But I'll digress at that point. Yeah. Regarding, outside of that, you have a responsibility to look at what the prevalent scientific, recommendation is. Look at it, read through it, understand what it says, right? Simply dismissing it is ignorant, I would say, and would lead to negligence. But understanding it, you should be able to explain it and understand exactly what it's saying. And you should be able to say, okay, will this work? And go through that mental and logical test and say, okay, here's why it's not going to work. Simply, throwing it away just because of politics or whatever is, to me, you're doing that selfishly. But if you care about the people, you'll say, okay, could this work? What parts of it might make sense, right? And say, okay, well, it won't work in Nigeria for this reasons, and here's what we're going to do instead. Right?
Sorry, let me just bring what I would have expected them to do, first of all, I've been meeting with religious and local leaders, kings, chiefs, and said, this is the problem, this is the model, how do we navigate this? You see, all you need to do in America is watch CNN and Fox and get news. In Nigeria, most of the real people we're talking about don't watch the news. So they need their chiefs, their pastors, their local imams to talk to them. Shutting down religious houses the first day is the most stupid thing. You could have leveraged on religious leaders to spread the right information. You could have invited them, talked to them, explained to them, then appeal to them that use your platform this weekend to sanitize your people on the way forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Ebun. Well, what can I say? You've heard it all here. As we're about to round up, you've heard about the topic today, COVID-19. What could they do? What are they not doing? What could be done better? All I want to say to all Nigerians, wherever you are watching, we have been extremely blessed with a wonderful, amazing country that is full of potential. There is no doubt about it. You're part of that potential, and possibly you might be the biggest potential there is in Nigeria. But we do have a plethora of resources. Have they been tapped? No. And that leads us to our next topic, which is coming next week. But I want to say, have they been tapped? No. Is there hope for Nigeria? Yes. Are we going to come through this crisis? Most definitely. Are we going to be what everyone has said and what has been said about us? I know that Nigerians are religious, about God. What God has said about Nigeria. Will we be that economic superpower? I guarantee you it. What we need right now is to stand together in no matter what situation or crisis, or even when it's all blown over. Stand together, unite, stand as one, walk as one, join together and speak as one. You've heard it from One Nation, One Voice. Next week, it's going to be One Nigeria. That is the hot topic right now. Multiple tongues, multiple tribes, multiple religions, multiple ethnic groups. Can we stand and be one country? One Nigeria? Is it a possibility? Is it a reality? I can't wait to hear your comments and your questions for next week. Hopefully we'll have time to answer those questions. Thank you so much. Bye.